Hello, my name's Jasper, you're watching Buckle Up, and this is the VW ID.4 GTX, and today I'm going to find out if it's any good. So the ID.4 is roughly Tiguan sized if you're looking at what kind of car this is, but VW owners will be familiar with GTI and GTE as model ranges. GTX is VW's electrification but still sportification of a model. So that means you've got a few changes over the normal ID.4. While you've got a very familiar ID face, because this borrows from essentially the rest of the ID range's styling, you do have a couple of little changes. You've got a diamond patterned front black plastic grille. You've got black plastic vents which are blanked in but sporty styling. This black and red contrast on this model looks really good as well. And then you've got very familiar ID traits. So large VW badge, this one does not light up, but a large light bar that moves into your IQ headlights. And then quite a vertical but smooth profile at the front of the car. Quite a high bonnet, and you've got some nice elements of creasing up here. And then as we move around to the side, you will see these massive gloss black alloy wheels. They are a 21-inch design and do look a little bit like dinner plates. They match quite nicely, however, with your gloss black door mirror, your gloss black roofline and roof bars, and your gloss black GTX badge. In your B-pillar, you've got the little Volkswagen script, and you've got the standard ID electronic door releases, which are designed so the handle itself doesn't move in the name of aerodynamics. Back here, you've got your charging port. That is a Type 2 and CCS fast charger, and this will charge at speeds of up to 175 kilowatts. So an 80% charge in about 28 minutes. There's not too much sculpting or styling down the side of the car. You've got a strong hip line and a little bit down at the bottom of the doors, contrast wheel arches, and then a vaguely SUV style profile. So your roof stays pretty high throughout the length of the vehicle and then begins to dip away into a little boot spoiler at the back. Around here, you've got large light clusters with a kind of pixelated design, a brilliant light bar that goes across the entire back of the vehicle. This badge also does not light up, but it's a very nice pop of white on the rear of the car. It doesn't say ID.4, it says GTX. They're really leaning into the GTX styling here, and I do like the deep sculpting in this bumper. It does look pretty sporty. When you pair that with this blacked in rear tail glass and little boot spoiler, it does look pretty good. If we pop open this boot, which is electric, you are greeted with 540 litres of storage space. It's a pretty boxy, open, square location, quite practical. And if you fold those rear seats down, you get 1,575 litres of storage space, which again is pretty good. You've got some under boot floor storage, but this false floor does mean you have essentially a completely flat load lip. There are a few different tie down points, a luggage tie down clip, bag hooks, a 12-volt socket, and you've also got Annette. She's here too. Great, good to see you. There are little cubbies on both sides of the boot, and you've got through loading in the central seat. The seats do fold in a 60-40 split, but if you've got some skis, you can stick them all the way through. Let's have a look in the back seats. Well, back here they are leaning into the sporty styling because I've got leather and Alcantara on the seats with red contrast stitching, so you know it must be a sporty interior. It is quite nice, comfortable. The seating position is very good, and if I pop this headrest up, you'll see that I, at the princely height of 5'7.5" or 173 centimetres, do still have headroom. The panoramic sunroof is massive, but where the blind slots in above you does eat into headroom a smidge, so somebody who's 180 centimetres tall might have to just slouch a little bit back here. With this seat in a kind of normalish person driving position, so slightly further back than I'd have it, I do still have plenty of legroom, so it is a relatively spacious place. You can see through to the front because these seats are sporty but pinch in at the top, and then it does feel pretty open because there's not really a center console down here. You do have two air vents, two USB Type-C charging ports, and a third zone of climate control just down here. Pair that with the practical elements in terms of cup holders in the rear armrest, two ISOFIX points on both of these outer seats behind fold-down plastic covers, and reasonably sized door bins, however they are not felt lined. You've also got pockets on the back of these seats it is a relatively practical interior. The door card up at the top does feel pretty cheap, but you do have some nice gloss black elements and soft touch bits around the door handle where you're more likely to actually touch it. Harman Kardon audio system in here, so pretty premium, and yeah, it does feel pretty good, relatively modern and pretty airy. The bench is pretty flat, so if you do need to get 3 people back here, it'll be relatively comfortable, and the seats do offer a good amount of support when you're on the outer pair because there's a little bit of sculpting that helps hold you in place. Really handy for if your driver's hooning it around in their GTX. So up in the front, what's it like? Well, it's pretty spacious and has got some nice materials. So I've got contrast red stitching and leather on the dashboard. That is nice and soft touch up here. And then I've got leather and contrast red stitching on my steering wheel, including a little GTX emblem. GTX is also embossed into these seats, and you've got lovely contrast stitching all the way around the sporty seats. The thing that makes it feel a little bit less sporty is this armrest, which I must say is a bit weird, but kind of necessary because the center console in this sits so low. You've got a pair of cup holders up at the front, surrounded in gloss black plastic. You've got a large bin down here, which has a roll top cover over it. Down there at the front, you've got somewhere to store your phone, a pair of USB Type-C sockets for charging, and a larger kind of cubby area down here with a removable or movable divider. So the interior in terms of the center console is pretty spacious, and you've got large door bins, but only the bottom of these is felt lined. The back has no felt in them, and the sides here are not felt lined, so if you've got something like a can or bottle of water in there, it might be a little bit rattly. The glove box is classic ID, so it's unfortunately quite small, but you do have enough storage elsewhere to kind of make up for that. Obviously, if this was a left-hand drive car, that glove box would be over here and massive. You do have the classic ID things, so the pedals have got a play and a pause button on them, and then you've got a large center infotainment screen, which is pretty decent. It works well enough, it swipes nicely, the menus do move quite quickly, and the graphics are really crisp and clear. You've got a small driver's binnacle which moves with your steering wheel. This has got plenty of adjustability, which is really handy. And then ID controls, so my drive selector is on the right hand stalk and my wipers and indicators are on the left hand stalk. My light controls are in a panel over on the dashboard here. And I've got touch sensitive buttons on the steering wheel. Not as good as proper buttons. Similarly with the climate control, that's a bar across the bottom of this screen, but you do have little sliders to allow you to change things quickly, and they do light up at night at least. On the whole, this cabin is pretty nice. It has some elements of LED ambient lighting in the door cards and underneath the dashboard, so it's a relatively modern and reasonably sporty feeling interior. The other thing that's worth mentioning is just how comfortable these seats are. I've got under thigh support, which is adjustable, and then the rest of the seat adjusts electrically with lumbar support, and these are the ergo active seats, so it will massage me by inflating and deflating little sections of the backrest and under thigh support to kind of keep me moving a little bit on a longer journey. So a pretty comfortable, albeit slightly sporting interior. Let's see how it drives. So the GTX, it has some performance credentials it needs to live up to, and with 340 PS, all-wheel drive and a combined amount of torque of 679 Newton meters, those are some pretty strong numbers to start with. The primary amount of power and torque comes from the motor at the rear, so in theory you've got a decent amount of a sporting setup there. This will do 0 to 62 miles an hour in 5.4 seconds, which is not too shabby. The ID.4 is a pretty comfortable car despite it having large alloy wheels, although you can feel the firmness in the suspension when you're driving around because the ride is a little bit harsh. It's certainly got enough power and torque to pin you back into your seat and mean that when it comes to bits of entertainment, you can have a little bit of fun when you're driving this car. You can tell that this is one of the slightly older ID products because the screen in the center is smaller than you can get in other models, and your dash cluster is a smaller one that moves with the steering wheel. You do still have a massive heads-up display with augmented reality features though, so you've not missed all of the bits of technology. The car will definitely look after you too, because you've got the full range of adaptive cruise control with lane keep assist and blind spot monitoring, etc. So you are definitely well cared for when it comes to technology. And the car is easy to place on the road. You've got vaguely powerful haunches that you can see at the front of the car, and because it's the ID.4 and it's got quite a vertical back end and vertical front end, you kind of know where the extremities of the car are. WLTP figures claim you can do 322 miles on a full charge, and the battery capacity in this is 77 kilowatt hours of usable space. We have got 94% at the moment, and the car is telling me I can do 269 miles, so you're probably not going to see that 322 in the real world, but if you're sensible, you should at least be able to get somewhere in the region of at least 250 miles. It might be difficult to obtain good range in this car though, because after all, you've got 340 PS available and quite an addictive amount of torque, which means that you kind of want to press on and have a little bit of fun. Heavy acceleration is all well and good as long as you can stop pretty well, and the brakes are effective, but you really have to work the brake pedal to actually make it slow you down. The regenerative braking is pretty strong, but you've got to push through that element of the brake pedal before you actually start getting some proper friction brakes. With the GTX being in theory a sporty model, I am kind of pleased to report that certainly the cabin does feel very sporty. I like the way it's built up around me. I feel quite cocooned. The seats are really comfortable and very supportive, very grippy. This armrest doesn't feel particularly sporty, but elements of the cabin around me, like the stitching, the lighting, the design and styling, they all do make it feel pretty sporty in here. The other thing that is vaguely sporty as well is the driving experience. Now, it's not a chassis with a tremendous amount of feeling because it's an EV product, and one thing that they often suffer with is a lack of feeling or feedback. But I am pleased to report that the steering itself does have a little bit of weight that's behind it. You can feel a smidge of what's happening coming through to your hands, and yeah, it's not the most engaging driving experience, but it does offer you just a little bit. It's not a Golf GTI, but as an EV product goes, it's okay. So all in all, not a bad driving experience. Let's go and conclude. So the ID.4 GTX, is it a GTI? Absolutely not, but it does lean into the GTI mantra of putting performance in the hands of people who have a family, a dog, luggage. It's a practical but pretty fast and surprisingly spacious family crossover. So if you're looking for something that's an EV and pretty pokey, this is something to look at. That's everything for today's video, so thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the Buckle Up YouTube channel. Click that notification bell so you don't miss one of our uploads. There are a few other ways you can support the channel: our merch store, linked in the video description, or by following us on one or all of our social medias, also linked in the video description. You can also become a channel member directly here on YouTube if you'd like to support us on a monthly basis. I will see you in the next one. Bye!